ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to the show. Christian, how you
Thank
doing?
you. Great. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in. And I know it's been a heavy week.
It
Lots
has.
of America's been on our minds.
It is. It is. It has been a very tragic week, a very devastating week. Want to welcome everybody back. This is the best time for everyone, to get back. It has been a very tragic. Had a little audio malfunction here. Yeah, it's the best time for everybody to get together and and experience the camaraderie of shared interest. And if there's one bright silver lining that this week has procured, and that is what my brother said, is that it really has brought at least the right together in many senses. If not the entire nation, which is what I was truly hoping for, but yeah, we used to band together as a nation anytime there was a big tragedy like this. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be that way anymore. But hey, Roy, welcome aboard. Welcome. Good to see you.
Well,
But
I think Charlie wanted to be a divisive figure. Like he was confrontational. He was contentious. He wasn't right. He was pushing back against this sort of the wokeness of that everything should be tolerated, right?
done.
I think one of his main theses was that there are certain things we don't have to tolerate in a civilized society, right? We fought
Right.
for long, hard. One of them is violence. One of them, right, that a woman can ride public transportation and sit down next to a man much larger and more powerful than her and not be afraid.
Right.
Right? These are hard-won fights through civilization, and we shouldn't tolerate things that undermine that.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah,
And
Charlie.
and anything type of identity politics or things, right, that he would challenge that. And so obviously he was okay with going against the grain, against the prevailing orthodoxy, and ruffling some feathers. I think that was. But he wanted to engage. He wanted to go out where people were in this bubble, were so sure of themselves that wokeness was the only way to look at the world, to let
Yeah.
them know, no, wokeness has a lot of flaws.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and right. And you're absolutely right. He was one of those who believed in testing ideas, right, and believed in testing the limits of ideas. And he was not any. He wasn't afraid. I'll give him that. I mean, he was definitely on the cutting edge of these conversations, and believed that free exchange of ideas, that testing of ideas, was the way to actually achieve unity. And something, he wasn't above compromise either. Like for
Yeah.
all of his contentiousness and all of the labels that he's received of being like alt right or far right or fascist or Nazi or blah 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 blah, the same old labels that you hear for literally 80 million people in America, right? Like literally the entire Republican side or the entire side of that's right of center. You know, he was relatively moderate. He was one who had like a what I would call a compromised position on like a lot of different topics, like on
Well, yeah.
housing and on government corruption and how to manage that, and on like I could speak about his
Yeah.
topics, like his positions for like 20 minutes about things that he wasn't what I would call conservative on, right? And
Yeah.
like and yet
Yeah, and yeah, right. I mean, he was open-minded enough. I mean, his slogan right there on his thing was "Change my mind." If you had a point that he hadn't considered that you could bring to him, then he would do that. But he wanted to bring in points maybe you hadn't considered. Certainly, that weren't being taught in college campuses, right? The conservative viewpoint being this just echo chamber of the left was the first time some of these students or young people were encountering that. And but he,
absolutely.
he was open to new ideas. But yeah, we're not here to say that all of his ideas were correct or perfect or anything like that. But it's certainly something that by silencing him, I think we need to reevaluate what things he was saying that were controversial. Were they true? And even universities, I think, should go about to teach, include some of his curriculum in theirs rather than just a one-sided viewpoint. Say, well, Charlie Kirk right? This is what I'm teaching as a teacher, but Charlie Kirk would say this and this and this and this, right? And
Right.
I think that would be an honest way of sort of dealing with and not letting somebody who wants to silence a contrary viewpoint win.
Absolutely. So I want to kind of address what Chris said because it's a good stage for our entire discussion today. So Chris, All Things Fun says, when you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Rhetoric is still rhetoric. I want to point out the sword that you're pointing to is rhetoric. It's not a gun, right? It's words, right? Charlie's weapon of choice was words. And I would have no problem, and Charlie Kirk would have no problem with somebody fighting back with that same sword. As a matter of fact, he welcomed it, he relished it, he loved that sword play, words against words. If this was a battle of words, and he was indeed living and dying by that same tool, none of us would be here talking about this. This would just be another day. But he didn't get fought with words. He got fought with a coward who did not know how to use that sword. He didn't know how to use words. And because he had already lost the battle of ideas, that's why he fought back with a different weapon, right? And even rhetoric, you're looking at one of the few, I don't know exactly how Christian feels about this, but you're looking at one of the few close to a true, like, free speech absolutist. Like, I'm about as close as they come. The only speech that I don't think should be fair game is speech that directly and immediately impacts somebody's life, liberty, or property, like directly and immediately. So, like, it would need to be like most of the stuff we have on the books, like, slander, libel. But aside from that, like, I think everything that Charlie Kirk said is fair game. I think people calling him fascist is fair game. I think it's stupid.
Irresponsible, yeah.
I
But we
think it's
allow
irresponsible, but it's fair
irresponsibility,
game.
right?
But it's fair
Right.
game. That's free speech.
And this part of things, so the government obviously can infringe upon people's right. You say something stupid, even a lie, right? If I were to say Eddie is black, a black person, right? Even though that's a lie, the government cannot come after me for saying an untrue statement, right? Now, but that doesn't mean there aren't consequences, and that's what we'd seen this week of people who were making very public posts celebrating political assassination, right? That this in any way was a good thing, just because the person whose ideas and speech was something they disagreed with or disliked, then they should celebrate a vigilante murder, right?
Right.
A non-due process, somebody who had committed no crime other than being ideologically opposed to them and speaking it and having a platform to express those ideas.
That's it.
Right. So what we've seen this week is a lot of consequences. People losing their jobs, losing status, coming down. These are social consequences. None of this is from the federal government, right? The government punishing people for what they say, right? And so this is part of the thing. Like I am. As it comes to the government cannot come after you for what you say, who you associate with, what church, what religion you go to, and what you try to publish, right? Now, if you're trying to publish coordinated plans for overthrowing the government, that's the one area that they sort of like, hey, let's go kill the president and overthrow the government, that you can face criminal consequences, right?
Absolutely.
But other than that, like, but our society can still look at speech and say, this is un-American. This doesn't represent our country. This doesn't represent our culture, and reject and socially ostracize people that express speech that is violent, dangerous, or antisocial.
Absolutely. And right. So I want to discuss who Charlie Kirk was as a person for just a brief moment, right? I want to discuss what his actual accomplishments were, what his actual views were for just a brief moment, because there seems to be a lot of confusion about who Charlie Kirk was, right? And it's the same kind of confusion you would expect from people that, live in a bubble, right? That only hear a certain type of idea or a certain type of smattering of another person, slander of another
Well,
person.
I bet a lot of the people that had never actually listened to any of his ideas, they just
Okay.
heard from other people that he was a fascist right wing. They'd heard these labels and
Yep.
felt like, well, if that's who that is, then he deserves to die, without actually ever considering his ideas or anything that he said.
Yep. Yeah, as a matter of fact, yeah, it's like I'll go online and I'll see like the same like 8 or 9 troublesome quotes, and some of them are like not even bad quotes. They're just like taken out of context, and there's nothing wrong with them, right? But like if you listen to it in context, to be like, oh, it's just a relatively mainstream center right idea, like, and some are actually just worded very poorly, and he could have done better, right? Like it's just bad rhetoric or something like that. And some of them he's corrected since then, but nobody goes back and checks for the correct. But anyway, but yeah, it's the same like 8 quotes or something like that. But I just want to talk briefly about who Charlie Kirk was, because he was somebody who was a giant, a titan, in this industry, in the industry that I aspire to, the Christian and I aspire to. He was a titan, like massive shoes to fill, like incredibly popular, incredibly charismatic, extremely intelligent, like regardless of whether or not you agree with his ideas, and there's many ideas that even Christian and I disagree with him on, regardless of whether you agree with him or not, he was like easily 150 IQ. I believe he had eidetic memory. He was just like a lightning sharp guy.
And a rising star,
And a
young at
right
31, so much to accomplish.
Yeah, he could. It like I think what was it, Tucker maybe or somebody. Matt Walsh said he probably would have been president in 10, 20 years. He was just, I mean 20 years or so. He was just so sharp, so capable, and he started his company at age 18. And now it's like a
Yeah.
multi-million dollar company, has like chapters in almost every state in multiple countries. He's got like, what does he have? Like 5.6 million followers on X, 8.7 million followers on Instagram. Like we're over here with like 12, 13,000, like struggling to get to 13,000. And he's just like, oh, no big, and here's one for you. You ready? Since his untimely death, his following on YouTube, for example, has gone up from 3.8 million to 4.5 million followers, right? So, like, this just goes to show you that this kind of fight this kind of attack is not putting Charlie Kirk in his place. It's doing the opposite. If there was a way to amplify Charlie Kirk's message, nothing would do it better than what just happened. So if that was the goal, holy cow, they failed. Like monumentous failure, epic failure. Nobody could have amplified his voice more
Well,
than this.
I obviously, what we know on our last broadcast, the shooter had not been apprehended.
Right.
If this person they apprehended ends up being the shooter, allegedly, it seems like he has confessed to it. That obviously it was just an expression of anger. Young people don't think.
Right.
Again, my father was killed by a 20-year-old who just had no perspective and didn't think, right? Who's
Right.
been spending the rest of his life in jail.
Yep.
And so obviously, this is when somebody could think about it, right? This is part of the thing why we're here at Common Mansplaining. We want to approach these issues intellectually or cerebrally. We want to think about them, approach them. When people get too emotional, it's the limbic part of the brain. You can turn off reason and you can make decisions that are emotional, right? Like just,
Right.
I think I'll just kill this person and ruin the rest of my life and ruin, hurt him, certainly end this person's life and its consequences. It's a very selfish worldview and very short-sighted, and basically only the young and the extremely sociopathic are capable of. But it's sad. Obviously, we would say like this person is just an advocate for ideas.
That's it.
He's just right. He hasn't run for office yet, and so even though right, it was a political assassination because the person hated him for his political ideas and his contrary political opinions, right? To go after just an idea man
Yeah.
Is really,
It's next level.
it's really almost unprecedented. I
Right.
mean,
It's next level. It's absolutely like this is something we haven't really seen before in America. Like for the most part, every like major assassination that I can recall has been someone with a position of like political power, like massive influence, like presidents or like senators or like somebody that's already done something, like actually put into action some kind of execution of their ideas. And Charlie Kirk, the only thing he's done is talk. That's it. It's just like another layer of like.
it's certainly not. It's not worth assassination.
Yeah, I mean, none of these situations are, to be fair, right? But like Charlie, this is definitely a new layer of crazy, and I mean, and on top of that, I mean, this is probably the most significant assassination in 70 years or so, 50, 70 years.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and it's sad that because people have died since JFK, right? Since Martin Luther King, people have died since then, but just none of them have been.
I would say it's the most serious political attack since Scalise, who lived,
Yeah,
right,
definitely that.
And Ronald Reagan, who lived, right,
Right.
but it's as far as where the person has been slain. This is something that this new generation, is having to cope with, and have to realize that, well, I wanted to go back to talk about rhetoric. That rhetoric is received by different people, and we see emotional rhetoric or other things and can kind of contextualize it and understand it and try to see the message or try to see the feeling, and not feel threatened by it. Certainly, when the rhetoric isn't directed at me personally, isn't using my name. But I am one of those people who thinks that rhetoric matters. I almost feel like we could justify the war against Iraq purely for the rhetoric that Iraq used towards America.
Okay.
Simply for the things that they said. Made them such a threat, right? Independent of any type of WMDs or other things. There's certain like statements on the record in public settings was enough, I think, to warrant or us wanting a regime change and considering them a threat because of some other factors. So rhetoric matters. Now, in their culture, Middle Eastern culture, you always use the strongest terms, and so sometimes translating their things comes across as very extreme.
Right.
But we tend to be more understated in our rhetoric here.
Yeah.
Right. Like we would declare war by saying we find the situation untenable. Like something really understated is like freaking launch every naval ship out. We're going all out war, right? Because a situation is untenable, right? So when we hear strong language on the left, when people are using like this is the biggest threat to democracy, Tim Walz, like he's yelling at people about how bad a threat the right is, and how we use teams even in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, him immediately being labeled right wing, right? Which is a way to sort of dismissive as this sort of loony out on the fringe, right? And he wasn't a fringe debater. Right? There were ideas that were had been talked about for a long time and were shared by lots of people. He wasn't unique in having unique ideas. He was just trying to share ideas in contexts where people weren't exposed to them, but they weren't unique fringe ideas, right?
Right.
But to now take, I guess the point is right that the left had demonized these things to a point, and on an emotional level, and calling them a threat to our country. It almost seems like the patriotic thing, the right thing, if we want to save our country, is to stop, right? And it's justifying. It's a message that we, since we're used to being so understated in our statements of violence, right? When you go over the top like that, it comes across. We're not used to hearing that. Like if our leaders use that strong language, it gets our attention because we're so used to in our culture not going over the top with that.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. Now, obviously, I feel like rhetoric is again still it's protected, right? Regardless
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
how
But
extreme it
it's
is. You're
effect.
right.
It's effect I'm talking about. It's
Yeah.
effect. We
Absolutely.
can't
Absolutely.
measure. It's hard. It's hard for somebody like a congressman, a person with a forum, who could use measured, right? Could voice disapproval, disagreement, even strong disapproval, without using language that would
Sure.
incite
Well, and
violence. Now they're trying to escalate it, but you don't know how it's going to be received, especially by these young people without context, sociopaths who are going to hear this message and hear that, oh, okay, these ideas, this person, these ideas aren't just ideas of speech. These are right. They say speech is violence. They're like, Charlie Kirk has actually inflicted violence upon me, and I
right.
have to respond in kind of violence.
Right.
That's right. That's where we draw the line that your rhetoric is
Well,
not violent.
yeah. So, well, one thing I'll grant you is that a lot of it's who it's coming from too, right? Like
Yeah.
on the left, they're far more likely to call speech violence, and so then for the
Mm.
group that listens to that and then hears this ultra harsh language, right? Like that's like first they say speech is violence and drill that into you, and then they say also this guy is Hitler. Then it's like, ooh, like time to raise up, time to do something. And so that's a dangerous combination. Again, I'd say it's protected, but yes, it is a dangerous combination. You would hope that politicians would be more responsible. Now, I'll be the first one
Yeah.
to
They
say
can't.
for everybody,
We can't
hold on.
imprison them for their irresponsible
Yeah,
rhetoric. Is
well,
what
for
I'm saying. Yeah.
everybody out there that's in the audience that's on the left that's listening, hear me say this. Trump is one of the least responsible people I've ever met with rhetoric. Now, he doesn't quite use it in the same harsh way that people use it against him. It's often just like what I would call flippant or like erroneous, very very he doesn't take care with his words, right? He says things a lot of the time that I don't even know if he knows what it means. And sometimes he does, or he dumbs it down to like a third grade level or something, right? So there's a lot of problems with rhetoric in this nation. Like, that's part of the problem is rhetoric. Part of the problem is our ultra polarization within the social media, right? Like, we've gotten to this point where it's very rare to find that centrist bracket anymore. It's everybody's either way on the right, way on the left, right? To answer one of CK's queries, absolutely the right denounces violence. Absolutely the right spoke out strongly against a lot of these mass shootings that have occurred. And one of the things that happens is I've noticed in recent times there's always going to be a group who speaks responsibly. There's always going to be a group who denounces violence when they're supposed to, right? Like even on the left after this Charlie Kirk shooting, plenty of people who denounced violence. Now, what's interesting to note, though, is the percentages, and they do these polls. And one of the results of this poll I want to share with you right now. They found that of late, Republicans and Democrats both have similar numbers of people who denounce violence. What's different between the two parties is that the Democrats have a considerably larger group of people who actually claim it is proper to celebrate the failure, the death of someone they're opposed to by like almost twice the amount, right? It was like 11% to 5 or 6% or something like that. Like double the amount on the left was ready to celebrate Charlie Kirk's death and was like, just, whatever, it's no big deal. Yay, Charlie Kirk, like unbelievably callous, unbelievably just incompassionate, lack of remorse, just unbelievable that they could just do that. And the right doesn't have that problem, right? There's some stark differences between the two. What's remarkable? Yeah, go ahead.
Here's the thing, real quick. So the right gets a reputation for violence because we celebrate violence in a military context, right?
Right.
We celebrated the violence against Iran because they were trying to build nuclear weapons. We celebrated violence. We had a lot of violent and emotional responses after October 7th when Israel attacked, and people talking about leveling Gaza naked in a parking lot, right? That was in response to violence or into military threats, things like that. I don't think the right has the same thing about calling out and calling for violence when it comes to contrary ideas.
Yeah, right. Well, and see, that's a key difference, right? You very rarely will find a Republican or a conservative that's like, oh no, they disagree with me, violence, right? Now, here's where they do call for violence a lot, and I'm going to speak out against it right now, right?
Sure.
After something like this happens, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of pain, and the right is very quick to call for violence. They're very quick to say, let's kill him. Let's call for the death penalty. They're very quick to do that. And I don't like it. I'm a pro-life guy, right? And I want you guys to hear this. For those of you guys who are listening, I'm pro-life, right? I don't believe in killing. It's just not something I like doing, right? Is it necessary sometimes to defend the lives of those you care about? Yes, sometimes. Is it necessary sometimes to defend the life of your faith? Perhaps. Is it necessary just to punish? I think that's God's domain. That's just me personally. Now, we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go through. But I just want you guys to hear that both sides have their own types of problems, but this one has thrown into high relief the problems on the left, right? This one is thrown in. Obviously, we're going to discuss each side's problems as we come to it, right? Like this one is obviously demonstrating some of the key problems of the left that needs to silence via violence because they can't silence with words, the left that needs to celebrate the death of somebody who was truly great and then cover it up, like mitigate their culpability because one, they try to like thrust MAGAhood on this guy, like really trying to make him into somebody who's on the right when no evidence at all shows that he's on the right. And two, they're trying to like mitigate the culpability for killing Charlie because they want to call Charlie a fascist, a misogynist, a racist, a bigot, a white supremacist, whatever, like any one of those. Well, I'm here to tell you because we're talking about Charlie Kirk and who he was as a person, I promise you he was not racist. I promise you he was not misogynist. He was not a bigot. He was not sexist. He was not white supremacist. He was not any of that nonsense. He wasn't fascist. He wasn't Hitler. He wasn't a Nazi. None of that. Not even close. He wasn't even close. He was a mainstream center-right guy. That's it. Now, did he make some racially charged statements? Yes, but that's not the same thing as racism, right? Just like I can criticize the Israeli government, that isn't me saying all Jews are inferior,
Or
right?
being anti-Semitic.
Right. It's completely different, right? I think the one statement that they keep quoting out of context, for example, is when Charlie Kirk said something like if he saw a black pilot, he would worry that they're qualified, right? And of course, if anybody had any sense, they would realize that's in the context of DEI. He was referring to exclusively a particular company who had expressly put out a statement saying, by the way, we have to have X number of African American pilots. And as a consequence, we have dropped the standards. Like, literally made that open statement. So, of course, like you guys should go online and look at Charlie Kirk's Wikipedia page. It is horrible. Like the Wikipedia page is dismal. I did some research today.
Job. Yeah.
Total. Like I'm like, none of this junk is real. Like, for example, they crucify him over like COVID misinformation, and I'm like, all right, okay, what did he say? Like I'm like interested, right? I'm like, what did he say? And I start digging into it. It all comes from this one statement he said where he's like, hydroxychloroquine is used in curing COVID cases. And I'm like, is that real? Did he say that? So first I checked to see if he said that. And at the time, when he said it, there was a huge study that had just come out saying that hydroxychloroquine was an effective prophylactic. And I'm like, so what's the problem? Like, that's not COVID maybe it is misinformation now if you were to keep saying it, right? Like, but when he said it back in 2020, this is the stuff that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, most people, like you said, when they listen to something that Charlie Kirk said, they hear it in a bubble. They hear very short snippets that are taken out of context and either misquoted or misinterpreted or, yeah.
Well, this is what we want our watchers, the common man, where we here speak to the common man, to see through media bias. One thing they'll do with media bias is say every time there's an article that mentioned Hillary Clinton, started like this. Say Hillary Clinton had a new grandchild born, and she was in Florida visiting her grandchild. It was every media story said Hillary Clinton, who was amassed in a Whitewater scandal for trading and mishandling funds in the 1980s, recently visited Florida, right? If you dredge up something that's completely unrelated to the story just to like tarnish or context that, right? You would see that as bias. Like that's what they do to the right people when like you're doing anything if like, a Charlie Kirk were to like be pumping gas. And Charlie Kirk, a person who once espoused the idea of using hydrochloric to treat COVID, was seen pumping gas. And it's like, whoa, what are you reporting here? And so his Wikipedia page is a classic study. I would like you to read it before it gets changed.
Yeah.
And how the media can try to twist things, right? You can twist Stephen Christ, who was perfect, and twist things if you were like, to try to make things sound weird. It's just perfect. So propaganda spin. And that's, I think, where right now everybody's in spin mode. The left is really in damage control because, right, the violence here in Charlotte against Irina Zarutska is beyond spin and does not fit any narrative. And they need to just accept that and not try to spin it or justify it. And Charlie Kirk's murder at the hand of an enraged leftist, right, is beyond spin, right? Is a negative thing, and you need to not try to spin it, try to excuse it, right? You need to acknowledge this is a dangerous trend. We need to disown this, and we need corrective action. Now, one of the interesting things, I think a corrective action that should come to the Democratic Party, because we've said before, America needs an opposition party, but right now the Democratic Party is just so irresponsible. Nobody can even consider them. Like,
Same close.
We have no alternative. So, have you heard of the Sister Souljah moment? Do you remember that, or were you a little too young for that? Sister Souljah?
Maybe.
Okay. So during Bill Clinton's first run for the presidency was 1992, was right after the LA riots, right? The Rodney King verdict, the LA riots. And part of that, there was a white truck driver who was just pulled out of his truck by some rioters and a brick thrown at him, Reginald Denny.
I heard about that. Okay.
And there was some other black on white violence. And Sister Souljah was just a rapper from the inner city, but for somewhere, had a platform. And a reporter asked her, like, what do you think? Do you feel like this black on white violence was unwise? And Sister Souljah said, no, you can look up her comments, but essentially she said, we've been doing too much black on black murder and violence. Maybe we should just have a week where we do black on white violence, right? Yeah, I know. All right. Well, Bill Clinton, the next day after the statement comes out, was giving a speech to the Rainbow Coalition. That was Jesse Jackson's coalition. African Americans, right? In the primaries, still in the primaries, very important voting base of the Democratic Party. And he condemned Sister Souljah's statement, right? And said the left, the black community needed to come out and condemn this type of rhetoric too.
Sure.
Jesse Jackson, the black, hated and booed him. He took a lot, but it got him credibility. People they recognized and said, "Oh, he's willing to stand up to this." Right? Yep. Nobody in the modern Democratic Party is willing to stand up to anything like that.
No, right? Of course not.
And Clinton, showed he was a different kind of Democrat. He passed crime bills.
Yeah.
Different things like that. And the Democrats had some credibility on those issues.
Let's be fair. There are some people. There are some people. It's not as many as there are on the right.
I'm just saying, if the Democrats want to offer a real alternative, they need to be credible on anti-violence, on anti-crime,
and it needs to be. It needs to be broadly, like not just isolated situations of like Cenk Uygur or who's in it. Bernie Sanders came out was very, very classy about this too, for example. But like it can't just be like 5 or 6 people are classy about it, and then like Jasmine Crockett and the rest are bad. You know, like it can't be like that, right? Same thing on the right. Like I would like to see
who's ever leading the left.
right.
And I don't who's leading the left right now. Is it AOC?
Got me.
Who's right?
You got me. Yeah, you got me. Right. So anyway, one thing that I wanted to do today, and I hope that you guys can bear with me for this, is I wanted to offer a prayer. Right. I don't usually do this in public, but I do want to pray for Charlie Kirk and offer a prayer for this event. So for those of you guys who have this faith, please join in. For those of you who don't, just give us a few moments and be respectful, and we'll be right back with you. So, dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for Charlie Kirk as a gift to this world and to America. I want to thank you for Charlie's inspiration as a teacher and a mentor. I want to thank you for the gift of his message and his quest to make the free exchange of ideas important and to keep it like that. I pray that you guide his soul into your great house. I pray that you visit us with your spirit of peace and patience. I know there's a lot of anger out there and a lot of pain and a lot of grief, but I want you to give us the fortitude to endure and to turn the other cheek if necessary. It's a lost art in today's world. I pray that you watch over his family and help them bear on now that they have to endure without a husband and a father. I pray that you give us the grace to come together as a nation and to use this event for a greater good that I know will fit into your great plan. I pray that you give Christian and I individually the courage and the strength to take up this torch and to fill 1/1,000,000th of Charlie's Titanic shoes. And I want you to help us all in walking past the demons that are rejoicing in his death, celebrating this loss. That's truly despicable. Give us the strength to overlook that. Christian, anything you want to add on to that?
I would just say to remember our shared humanity, and to thank you for this American experience where we have freedom of speech and freedom of faith and freedom of conscience, that we might persuade rather than other force people to understand and to appreciate the gift that is our life. And I would say that in Jesus' name.
Amen. All right. I appreciate you guys bearing with us for that. I definitely do appreciate it. Man, it's such a tragedy, this event. I don't understand. Here's one thing I want to say. Like I said, on the right, there's less of this. On the left, there's more of it, a lot more of it. People celebrating his loss. When, for example, just a few short months ago, when Melissa Hortman was killed and Senator Hoffman was attacked, I immediately denounced that. Right? I wish it should just be a guarantee, right? It should just be a granted that everybody denounce this kind of political violence. It doesn't always happen, right? And again, there's this tennis match. The moment someone dies, and the left and the right are both constantly trying to pin it on the other team. I wish we could get past that. I really do. I wish that it was. I mean, obviously, we want to understand why this kind of thing occurs. Honestly, we do. But I mean, I wish that it didn't. So you'll just to give you guys a clue as to how you can know what the ideology of this guy really is, right? One side is saying, yeah, this guy's obviously leftist, and the other side is saying, yeah, we just want to reserve judgment and not figure out who he is, right? That's how you know which side, which side he actually belongs to. I'm going to tell you guys what we actually know about this guy so far, just so that you'll understand what's been updated in the last since our last time getting together. We know that he was caught, right? We know that he was caught. He grew up in a relatively seemed to be a loving household, right? Two-parent household, had a Judeo-Christian background, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
He went to
because
church.
of that, yeah, right. I think he was Mormon, wasn't he, or Church of
Yeah, he might
Latter-day
have been.
Saints?
I think he was raised LDS.
Or started that way, right?
Yeah.
And we know that since he went off to college, something radical in him changed, right? He used to be a scholarship student. He had like a near perfect ACT score. He was like super sharp, like going places. He had an incredibly bright future in front of him. And then he went off to college and something changed almost immediately, right? Because he only went through one semester of his full scholarship, right? And then dropped out of school. And then he ended up moving in with his trans boyfriend, girlfriend, trans boyfriend, girl. I don't really even know what to call it because it's a male
Well,
trans.
yeah, that trans element is another thing. I think more will be explored on that.
Yeah.
I don't want to conjecture, but it's definitely something that within the trans community they have felt like any type of pushback against their radical ideology is violence or deserving of violence.
Right.
Anyway,
that is very So he's living with the trans boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And he dropped out of school. And we know that he had like Antifa and trans ideology stuff engraved on his shell casings that, for his ammo. And we know that he was on Discord servers that were dedicated to like anti-fascist ideology, right? So it's pretty clear that this guy was an Antifa trans leftist, which these are all leftist ideology. Now, to be fair, he's crazy, obviously. Obviously, something's not right about him. So it could be any number of weird, contradictory ideologies mixed in with that stuff, right? And we don't know everything there is to know about this guy. But
just sociopathic, where ideology mixed with sociopathic tendencies.
Right, right. One thing I want to make sure that people do know, though, is there's a lot of misinformation going out claiming that this guy is MAGA because his family is MAGA, or at least I think his family is MAGA, right?
We're registered Republicans, yeah.
Yeah, registered Republicans, and maybe he used to be, right? Because he was with his family, but he's changed significantly over the last 2 years, and everybody says it, including the trans partner that seems to be cooperating with the FBI, right? So everybody knows this guy is no longer MAGA. There's a fake, just so you guys know, there's a fake photo out there that's of him in a Trump shirt, but then the poster quietly posted the real photo right after, so that he could, kind of get away with it. But it's obviously edited. It's the exact same photo, except for one has a Trump shirt superimposed over the guy. It's not a real picture. So it's not him in a random Trump shirt, right? There's so much pointing fingers going on, and everybody wants to pick him.
See, the common man, I think the common man sees through the spin, right?
I hope so.
What we have to think is why do the elites want us to think that they're not to blame, right? Why would they try to spin this? Why would they so want to get out a disinformation about this person's motives or influences? Why would that be important?
Right. There's only one reason, right? Because of course the ideology would point to flaws in theirs. Of course, yeah. And here we are. One thing that really upsets me is that the right is at least trying to I think it's trying to turn a page. Now, Trump is, I think, doing a little bit of theater, maybe a little bit too much theater at the moment. He's doing a lot of over emphasizing how much of a martyr Charlie is, and carrying his casket home in Air Force One and stuff like that. But I think that's appropriate because you guys have to remember this is Trump's personal friend. This is the guy who stumped for Trump. This is the guy who, by the way, and Charlie Kirk, criticized Trump many, many times, and then still ultimately was able to get along with him and promote Trump as a candidate.
Same thing here. We criticize Trump up, but there's no alternative. You got to vote for Trump.
Right. That should show you two things, right? Number one, it should show you that Charlie Kirk is willing to be amenable with somebody with whom he disagrees. And two, it should show you the poor quality of the candidate that was running against him. But I just wanted to point out that This is a huge event, right? People are the accusation I'm hearing on the left most often is that the right is overdoing it, right? Like they're trying to spin this up into
We're pouncing.
yeah, like we're turning this into a big thing when it's not really a big thing. But I'm like, this is a huge deal.
This is
And
a
I
big
would think,
deal.
like,
Yeah.
I want to be clear, it would be a huge deal if it happened on the left too. Like if Destiny
Martin Luther King's assassination was a huge deal, right?
yeah, it was a huge deal, right? Like if David Pac-Man tomorrow, God forbid, something happened. If something happened to him, I would lose my mind. I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on in the world?" And I would think it is a huge deal. And I would immediately come out and say, "Wow, this is terrible. Please don't commit political like all the appropriate. I don't understand why it's so hard on the left to do it. Like never would I go and say, "Well, David Pac-Man was a socialist, so ha ha." Like unbelievable ruthlessness of the left to start doing that. And it's like over 10% are saying that it's okay to celebrate a guy's death. That is a huge number. And guys, Charlie Kirk is not as conservative as I am. He's not even close.
I think it's a reflection to how invulnerable that part of the wing feels, that they're beyond criticism, that they're drunk on their own power. They still feel like this is 2022, the height of woke. We're going to look back on the height of woke, and they had power. They had DI everywhere. They could get people fired for saying things, right? So some people, right, acting this way are overestimating that the climate that right Trump and the climate has changed. People see the emperor has no clothes. Woke is not a governing principle we want to have in our culture, in our country, in our social interactions. And so this has been a way of sort of cleaning that out, identifying who are the people that still think they're drunk and that they can harass and bully people with woke ideologies, right? And give them give that sort of social element and make them clear, no, that's in the past. We're gonna mock that like we mocked Nehru jackets, right? That is out of fashion. What's in fashion is to come back to the middle, centrist, to realize, the values that America had, right? We don't hate America, we love America, right? And if we don't have common sense things like border control, like law and order, police enforcement of the laws that are on the books, things like that, then we don't have a country, right? And our basis of democracy has to be that our population is educated, knows the Constitution. And this is one thing. Charlie Kirk going to college campuses and finding that these young people in college don't know the Constitution, aren't being educated
at all. Right. Absolutely. I want to read something that Tanya said. She said, "This isn't about left versus right. It's about good versus evil." And I think she's very right. So and
we got a
Vaxland,
super chat.
thank you so much for your super chat. Vaxland says, "Is this a right or left channel?" Also, God bless you. So it's largely right. I mean, I'm not affiliated with any party. I'm registered libertarian, but I'm obviously conservative fiscally and often socially as well. So there's a few things that I cross over on, like I don't care if marijuana is legalized or not, stuff like that. Like I have some libertarian social stuff, like some non-victimless crime type stuff.
Yeah.
Don't care.
I would say that we're more right, just because the left demands a sort of orthodoxy. Any deviance from their line, any type of equivocation even, is rejected. Like they call Joe Rogan right wing now, right? For just having some slight disagreements with some very common sense things on the left wing. So, right, we're really for the common man. We're not elites. That's really the point of this channel, is that we can have intelligent commentary and insight into these topics without being elites. And we have to be suspicious of elites. Elites want to manipulate and take advantage of the common man. Generally, though, we're for common sense, which tends to put us more right of center in political or in the role of government, especially like we generally want less federal government in our lives to be happier.
Absolutely. But Tanya, absolutely, I agree that there is a a heavy element of good versus evil here. It's one of the difficulties of working with particularly the type of ideology that caused this great tragedy is that ideology doesn't believe in an absolute evil, right? It's very, very difficult to work with that collectively, because even as at a societal level, like, we have to come together and have some sort of ultimate agreement as to what we're going to enforce as law, what we consider to be evil, even if it doesn't perfectly mesh with, for example, like the Christian faith or others. We still have to kind of come together and create an objective set with which to operate off of. And it's very, very difficult to work with an ideology that refuses to acknowledge that there is that potential for an objective data set. So, yeah, I mean, one of the Charlie Kirk's greatest strengths was that he would go to college campuses, like Christian said, and educate people on the things that our nation has already collectively agreed upon, right? Like, there's so many basic things. And one of the funnest things I have to say, like, going back and watching Charlie Kirk videos, is like, he'll go on campus and they'll criticize him for like they'll like call him an idiot, they'll call him dumb, they'll call him uneducated because he doesn't have a college degree. And he's like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm uneducated.
he wasn't an academic elite.
He's like, what are you guys going to school for? Economics? Okay. Who's Adam Smith? Who's Milton Friedman? Who's, like, boom, 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 boom. And they're like, I don't know. I don't know. Who's Adam Keynes? Who's Keynes? He's like, oh, well, I know. Everybody knows Keynes. It's like, okay, great. What was his economic, profile about? He's like, it's like, we didn't know anything. He's like, so you're over here calling me dumb. And you go to, how much money a year do you pay for this college education where they teach you none of this stuff? Like, can you tell me what Constitution Article 1 is? Can you tell me what Federalist 12 is? Like, didn't say anything.
Yeah, victimhood. I mean, the woke is right. Everybody's a victim and oppressors, and we need to get beyond that. And that's not a way. That's not real education. And I think that's what Charlie was trying to, by saying, like, he didn't get a degree. He had an honorary doctorate from Liberty, but he did not. Right, so he was not an academic. And even though he was arguing ideas, he was doing it in opposition of the entrenched, tenured, far. It's like 83 to 90% left-wing academia, right? That all the viewpoints you're going to find from official college sources are heavily slanted left, especially in English departments, political science departments, any type of social science.
Right. So yeah, one poll that came up over the last, I think, like few hours actually is in Utah. The governor put out a poll, and it says, he asked people, is this the end of a dark chapter, or is it the beginning of a darker one? Right. And unfortunately, I'm here to communicate that it is not pretty. Right. The answers that were given on that poll, it's like 90+% say that it's the beginning of a darker chapter. I am here to tell you that I pray with every fiber of my being that is not the case. Right. And I think part of the problem is that everybody's already in that mindset where they think it might be. And that's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That's why I'm here to talk about, I want us not to go down that road, right? I want us to take a step back from the abyss, even if only a quick one, just to kind of take pause and look at where we are in the nation. If, heaven forbid, this turns into something more than what it is already, that's the worst thing that could happen. That's why I think it's so terribly important not to seek the death penalty with this guy. I think that would be a mistake. I think no matter how much, like, we want to bring somebody to justice, and no matter how much it might cost us, like, fiscally, just to, like, leave him in a jail for the next 35 years or whatever, right? Like, I understand there's reasons for it, but here's the big thing that I think everybody, kind of breezes over, especially on the right, because we tend to be more Christian on average, right? God can save anyone, right? If you think this guy's beyond repair, then you're not giving God his due credit, because he can save anyone. And I mean, even the worst of us. Right? And I have to believe that's the case because I've been in situations where I'm that guy, where I'm like never like this, but like I've definitely been the one sheep out of 100, like Christian says, like I've definitely been the person that God has to go find and bring back.
The wretch that God is going to save. And yeah, so I would say I hope it's not the beginning of a dark chapter. Right? Charles Manson, that was his prophecy of helter skelter, that there would be race wars, that inner city would be weaponized, right, and would rise up in anger, right, and then we'd have destabilization in the cities, and then that would spread, and then we'd become ungovernable, things like that. And so that's I don't want to make Charles Manson. I don't want to follow his, but it feels like Trump is trying to now address cities, right? He's addressing Washington D.C. and crime. It can be in order, and that's not fascism. He's just enforcing laws that are on the book. It's not authoritarianism because we have a means, and we don't need a violent revolution. We have a means to change leadership. We get to vote, right? Right. Why people rise up and revolt is when a dictator or something doesn't give them any means for regime change or any input. We absolutely have that in the republic, right? And there will be political consequences, but that our cities need to be saved, and that we shouldn't, right, in our humanity, shouldn't just write them off or dismiss them, but that violence should not be dismissed as just statistics. This is the thing, right? Charlie Kirk was not a statistic. He was a name. He was a face. He was a well-known person. But we should not be dismissive of other violent acts just because they're statistics or because they're not famous people, right? We should value their lives. Now, if there are laws, as far as the death penalty, if there are laws in the books, that's going to have to be judged by the facts and by a jury of his peers. I do feel like that you can take life in defense of yourself because the act was not just an act against Charlie Kirk. It was an antisocial act trying to destabilize, trying to stifle speech, right? Trying to have a chilling effect on anybody that spoke out in contrary to leftist orthodoxy. And that's what we want to do too. And we value it too much. It's too important that people be free to speak. The acts that undermine that are antisocial acts. Now, I'm glad that I will not be called to sit on that jury and have to make that decisions. But I would understand, and that it is a rare case that if the facts lean that way, that penalty be there as a deterrent against other people that would do something like this, and thinking that there'd be no real consequences for them.
Right. Now, I agree. I mean, there definitely needs to be consequences. Don't doubt that. And I mean, one great punishment I'm still trying to bring back. I think we should banish him. Right. I think we should exile him. I think that would be the best answer for. I mean, obviously,
welcome to Bangladesh. What?
Yeah, right.
Salvador, what do you say?
Like put him in El Salvadorian prison or something. No, I'm kidding. It doesn't really matter where he goes. I mean, as long as he's not here to
America's number one. Everywhere else is garbage.
Yeah, right. That's terrible. That's terrible. No, yeah. So yeah, but I mean, I do believe. I mean, I'm pro-life, so I do believe that everyone is redeemable. Honestly, there's a part of me that feels like death is the easy way out for him too. Right? Like I kind of want him to walk the long road of penance, right? I really want what I feel like true justice would be in this situation is for him to understand the grief and pain that he caused, and to realize that he's got to spend the rest of his life making up for it and still will fail, but will do his best to make that attempt, right? I feel like that would be true justice.
I would say that just because the government finds him guilty of a crime that's worthy of the death penalty and executes him doesn't mean that Christ cannot save him. Those are mutually exclusive things. So we're all just talking about the proper role of the government. Yes, citizens, we should not of ourselves judge somebody right to kill or worthy of the death penalty or things like that. The government does that. but and if he's found not guilty, then he's had due process. He's gone through that, and the people must know facts and understand them to a level that I don't. So I'm putting it in their trusted hands and in the legal system's hands. But I do want people to know that this is broadly something that we won't stand for. And I think that the people of Utah, the government is angry that this reflects on them. And any type of leniency, the type of sort of slap on the wrist, the sort of we'll let these people go free kind of attitude that we've seen, like in Charlotte, of career criminals, is not something that they're in this current environment that they're going to allow for. They're going to want to come down as taking this as serious as it can be.
Of course, of course. I want to address something that I know this is just a troll statement, right? Michael Smithers is talking about this being a KKK meeting and only pro-white. We're not even close. Like nothing of the sort. We're as open-minded here as you can get regarding that sort of thing. I love all races, all sexes, all gender, everything.
Just because we happen to be white doesn't mean that our ideas don't have a right to be heard.
Right. But anyway, Christian, any closing thoughts?
Well, I think that Charlie Kirk, again, should, for those who are angry or those about him, should change from being just an idea or a name. Maybe you should go and listen to some of the things that he said, right?
Yeah.
And not just secondhand hear about what people are saying, what the Wikipedia says about him. If you don't know enough about Charlie Kirk, try to read an unbiased book about him or watch some of his YouTubes. Make your own opinion about him. Right now, he's being, kind of put up, either diminished or lionized. He's somewhere in between there, and it doesn't mean just because he's a martyr, and he will always be a martyr, that every single one of his ideas is correct, and we need to follow them. But we should be aware of them, and we should consider them.
Absolutely.
Right. Just with any idea, we can't just turn a blind eye to them. And I think that would be a fitting part of his legacy. That, and if you're really angry about Charlie's death, honor him when you vote in November.
There you go. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Charlie Kirk, I mean, obviously, right? The things that are being said about him on the left are almost entirely fabricated from you gotta do the work. You gotta look at what he said for yourself. You gotta look at it in context. You have to watch the actual video. I can't tell you how many videos I've seen of Charlie in the last couple of days where it's very small snippets cut out specifically to try to paint a really negative or sometimes really positive picture, right? You got to do the work. You got to watch the entire video, watch the entire conversation, read the entire quote, understand exactly what's going on, and do not take Wikipedia's mind for it. But guys, thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate all the views. You guys, was a big night. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please check out some of our other videos. We'll catch you next time on Common Mansplaining.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming.